My name is Justin Gage, and you're tuned in to the Aquarium Drunkard Transmissions podcast with your host, Jason Woodbury.
I've just met what could be the making of me. She's got soul. She's got soul. Out of the blue, into my world, I found a pearl. She's got soul.
Howdy, welcome to Transmissions. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you tuned in today for our conversation with returning Transmissions guest, Nick Lowe. 20 years ago, he released The Convincer, which many folks state is one of his best albums. Spending time with it lately on the occasion of Yep Roc's brand new reissue, I think I have to agree. Following his rough and rowdy start at Stiff, his work producing Elvis Costello in the 70s and 80s, and his stint as a genuine pop star following the massive hit Cruel to Be Kind, Lowe found himself interested in reinventing the way he made records. The Convincer is part of a long line of albums that found him embracing subtle pop, R&B, and country tones, pushing his gentle voice even more into the crooner side of things. Originally released on September 11th, 2001, The Convincer helped to establish Lowe's reputation as a songwriter's songwriter. It was a huge joy to have him join me here on Transmissions to discuss the album and much more. I hope you enjoy our conversation. If you dig it, please share it around. And if you want to support us even further, go ahead and check out our Patreon page. We've got early access to a Nico Case interview over on Patreon right now. It'll be here in the regular feed in a couple weeks, but you can listen to an unedited, extended edition right now at our Patreon page just by signing up to pledge us a couple bucks a month to help us keep making this independent project. All right, here's Nick Lowe. I'll speak with you more on the other side. Thanks so much for tuning in to Transmissions. Well, Nick, thanks so much for joining us here on Transmissions. I appreciate you taking the time. It's an honor to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Thank you.
So this Sunday afternoon, I was going through some records and I was pulling stuff from my radio show. And I pulled out a nice 45 RPM single of you and Dave Edmunds singing a few Everly Brothers songs. And I listened to that, and then Sunday morning, of course, as of the time of this recording at least, word broke that Don Everly had passed away. And I must have listened at this point to you and Dave's version of Crying in the Rain like half a dozen times since then. I love that version so much.
Wow. Do you really?
Oh yeah. I love that version. It's beautiful. How important were the Everly Brothers to you? I imagine pretty pivotal.
Yeah, they were. They really were one of my favorites. You know, when I was a kid, I had an older sister, you know, who used to bring rock and roll records home when rock and roll was happening, you know, and some of them I didn't care for. You know, she really liked Pat Boone, for instance, which even at the age of 7, you know, I thought Pat's version of Tutti Frutti, you know, was not as good as Little Richard's.
Yeah, thin soup for sure.
Yeah, but I love Buddy Holly. She had Buddy Holly records, and Eddie Cochran was another one of my favorites, and still is. You know, I still love those. But the Everly Brothers was something else. You know, there was something so modern about them. You know, even though they were bang on song for that time, their records still sound kind of modern now. You know, there's something really timeless about them. And of course they had these fantastic songs written by Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, you know, amongst others, of course.
Yeah.
My mother was a pretty good singer. In fact, she taught me how to play the guitar, just pretty rudimentary chords, you know, and I used to sing with her. And of course, the Everly Brothers songs, you could dissect them, you know, even though they had this wonderful blend when they sounded like one creature, you know, a two-headed creature.
Yeah.
They had this wonderful blend, but you could dissect them. You know, you could sort of hear the two harmonies. And so I used to sing these Everly Brothers songs with my ma, and it gave me a real help, I think, for later on. You know, being able to sing a different tune from somebody else.
Yeah.
At the same time, in order to make a third thing happen. You know. And you know, not to be put off by what the other person was singing, in order to make a third sound. So they were certainly very influential to me. And as for the Beatles, you know, and the Stones and all them, they lapped them up. Of course, they did.
Yeah. So that's incredible. So your mother liked the Everly Brothers tunes, okay?
Yeah, she did. No, she liked them a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. Of course, Tom T. Hall also recently passed away, someone who you've covered. You do Shame on the Rain on That Old Magic, which such an incredible song. I wonder, did you ever have any interactions with Tom T. Hall in your adventures?
I didn't. No, I don't know how our paths didn't cross, really, because we had a few mutual friends, but no, I never got to meet him, unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunate. You know, I understand he was a bit of a handful. You know, but,
sure.
But you know, I've met a few of them too.
Yeah. Well, what a great songwriter. I suppose, following discussion of these, you know, passings, I don't need to tell you that it's been a difficult stretch the last couple of years, you know, the last year and a half. But, you know, one thing that really cheered me up last year was the at-home performance that you did for Rolling Stone. That was an incredible lift to the spirit. You were accompanied by, that's Roy, your son, is that right?
Yeah, Roy. Yes, my lad, yes.
What kind of music does Roy listen to, I wonder?
Well, he's got a very wide range of he's a very enthusiastic musician, and he's very good too. That's not a sort of a proud dad speaking. You know, it's a sort of a mystery to me, because he's got it. You know, he's young still, and he needs experience, but he's got all the ingredients, and it's amazing to me to see that, because I really haven't done anything to bring it on except play him a few records, and we listen to them in the car and talk about them, and I tell him a few old war stories and things, you know. But I haven't said, now come here, Roy, I'll show you how it goes, you know, or anything like that.
Right.
So it is a mystery to me how that works, and it's clear, you know, it's obvious, you know, it's really obvious. But he's got a very wide range of, you know, he's no, you know, for the difference between his generation and my generation is that when my generation, you know, rock and roll came along, you know, and it was completely different, certainly in its attitude, to anything that had happened before, even though we all know that arguably it started in the 1930s. I mean, I've heard records from the 1920s even, which sound very much like rock and roll to me.
Sure.
But officially it started in the 1950s, you know, and when it came along, because it was so new, it felt like my generation's music, and so we didn't listen to anything else. You know, I thought everything else was totally useless. You know, I might secretly have liked it a bit, but I shut those thoughts down. You know, because they were heresy. You know,
yeah.
And it wasn't until I started to get older, and I thought, what is the matter with you, you idiot? You know, this great song, you know, from My Fair Lady, you know, On the Street Where You Live, you know, this is a fantastic song. What's the matter with it? And I realized that, of course, I liked it all along. But Roy's generation, they don't have that at all. And coupled with the internet, where they can hear anything, anytime. We had to hear a rumor about someone who had a Jimmy Reed record across town.
Yeah.
And off we go, get on a bus and knock on their door, to hear it. But Roy can hear all kinds of music right away, as well. I don't have to tell you this, but as a result, he has a really wide range of musical appreciation. He's not frightened by a Doris Day record, or Bing Crosby or anything like that, as well as the Isley Brothers, George Jones, the Golden Gate Quartet. He's familiar with a wide range of music. But he is 16, and he also likes this thing called grime music, which is primarily London-based, like grime or drill. And it's a sort of rap music. It's a London rap music. It's not for the faint-hearted,
Sure.
But he plays me. He makes tracks himself. He beats, they call them, on his computer, and he's sold a few as well, to rappers, and he's pretty good at it. But it's sort of not for me, that kind of music. But I'm interested in it because he is, now.
Yeah. So by the time that you were his age, were you pretty much, were you at a similar level in terms of your own musical journey? You started playing pretty young, right?
I did, yes. No, he's streets ahead of me. He's way more informed and less of a snob, than me and my friends. We were way snobby. What a waste of time that was,
Yeah.
But he's streets ahead of me in that area. Yeah.
Well, it's been another great source of comfort, of course, is spending time revisiting The Convincer, which is such a great record, and obviously it's being reissued now for its 20th anniversary. I've listened to this record a lot of times. I listened to it Sunday morning while I was mowing the lawn, and
excellent.
And I gotta say, that's a pretty good context for it, because there is an easy swing to this record and a lilt to it that is just mind-blowing. It's such it's hard to put a finger exactly on it, because it's so casual, right, that it almost slips by you how sort of in the pocket and confident the record is. This is a great record. 20 years later, how do you feel listening to this one?
Well, I think it's my best record. I think it is. I mean, all my records are flawed in my view. There isn't one that I don't think is, oh God, why did we do that?
Sure.
But some of them are more, I feel more like that than others. And The Convincer is probably the one I feel less like that than any other. As you probably know, starting with The Impossible Bird, I and my friends and colleagues were trying something new. We're trying to make records. I was trying to make records and write songs in a different way from the way I'd been doing it before. And we had a go on the Impossible Bird, and that worked pretty well. And we had another go with Dig My Mood, and each time we sort of refine it, and we do something different. Say, oh yeah, this time if we do this and do that, and in a way, the fact that it was my name on the cover, and I was writing the songs and singing them, was just my job. It seemed like everybody had a job to do, and that happened to be my job. And especially with Neil Brockbank, who co-produced it with me, he produced it really, but I was very fussy about the arrangements and things like that. So that was more my area. But he did the hard work. And Bobby Irwin, who played drums as well, and was a very close friend of mine. But sadly, both of them have passed on now.
Yeah.
But we were really, really into this as a sort of project, And when the Convincer came along, that really was when the sort of quality of the songs and the quality of our situation sort of chimed most, because of course you can't just dial up a bunch of good songs when it's time to make a record. You hope that something as good's going to happen. And on all the records we did, you could put a fantastic record together, from a compilation of all of them. But anyway, the Convincer definitely was the one where it worked best. We had two more goes, as you probably know as well, with the Old Magic that you mentioned, and At My Age as well. And then we'd sort of done it then.
Yeah.
As far as it could go.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the Convincer is, like you mentioned, it's considered part of this trilogy of records. But when you look at it, it really is sort of part of a larger tapestry of the stuff that you and Neil did, because the two of you worked on a lot of records over that time. Not an insane amount, a very normal, steady pace of records. But it's interesting that you're talking about that refinement, because it's not like you hadn't been a musician for a long time at this point. You had, I think, if I check my notes right, you were 50, 51 or 52 about the time the Convincer came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you'd been playing music professionally and had huge hits and all this stuff for a few decades at that point. What was it that had settled in that allowed you to explore this sort of new territory? I mean, were you feeling pretty confident and also relaxed at that point? Because that's the sort of sense I get. There's a relaxedness to the record that seems to seep through.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Well, it's a very good question, that, because it was born out of anything but being relaxed. I have sort of explained at length this before, but there was a time when I really decided to change my shtick, and it was when I realized that my sort of pop star career, which lasted for, well, arguably, 4 or 5 years, I suppose I managed to squeeze out of it. But an actual pop star career, when people know you in the street and taxi drivers, recognize you and things like that, and you can get a table in a restaurant without any trouble at all. All that. Yeah. That I could tell was over. The public had got tired of my shtick, and so had I, frankly, as well. Mm. And I knew I wasn't one of those people who can ride through the decades, like Elton John has, or I don't know, Neil Diamond or someone like that. I wasn't one of those people. I'd had my go, and it had been fun and everything, but now here I was, an unhappy man, really, because I wouldn't seem to know what I was doing, what songs I was writing, drinking too much and taking too many drugs and everything. The whole cliche story, and so I decided to take a clean break and decide what to do next. And I came up with this theory about I'm going to use the fact that I'm getting older, and what up till that time in the pop business was absolute death. You can be anything, but too old is totally forbidden. And I thought, well, I'm going to actually embrace this and make an advantage of it, and I'm going to write in a way and present myself in a way that it'll be an actual advantage that I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And I'll just incorporate it into my act. And if I get it right, it won't be like some old guy, you know, moaning on. It'll be hip and cool, you know, like a sort of like a jazz record or something like that. Only it'll be pop, you know, it'll be a pop thing. And so I came up with this theory, and Bobby Irwin, who had been living in San Antonio, Texas for a few years. He married a girl from there. He and I had stayed in touch all the time he'd been away. And he was the only person really here that knew what I was talking about, you know. And I said, oh, boy, I wish you were back here, you know, to give me a hand with this, you know, because it would make it a whole lot easier, you know, because people don't get it here, you know. I've told them that I want to record live and I want to play quiet, you know, and make records where you get an atmosphere in the studio. You get a mood, you know, so you record an event sort of thing. It's not just, oh, congratulations, you've recorded live, you know, pat on the head. You know, I really want to make that be a thing, you know, so it sounds like something happened this day, you know. And he knew what I was talking about. And anyway, then, well, bad for him, but good for me. His marriage broke up and back he came to the UK. And and then we got down to it, really. We got down to it. And by this time, you know, I had some pretty good songs. And so we did the first one, Hooked Up with Neil, who I knew somewhat, but I got much more friendly with him, obviously, then. And we did the first one.
I love there's sort of a almost like a hangdog majesty to the record. So much of it, you know, I think of a song like Lately I've Let Things Slide, and I think I love this idea that you're talking about of sort of using your age as a tool, as a positive, you know, because a song like that, that lyric about smoking, I once quit, now I've got one lit, I just fell back into it. There's something about that just like, you hear some 20-year-old dude sing that and it's not gonna register. You know what I mean? Not the way it does when you sing it there, because there's all that sort of that loss, and so many of the characters on the album are bummed out and like really deeply blue, you know? But then there's also these like really sweet songs on it, you know. She's Got Soul is such a favorite, and then obviously Let's Stay In and Make Love is just one of the sweetest, most tender songs in your whole catalog, you know. So I mean, there's so much going on. I love that idea about trying to capture the mood, you know. Was Dig My Mood almost a reference to that sort of thing, maybe, the title?
Well, I suppose so. Actually, we were all sitting around a table in a pub one day when we just started recording Dig My Mood, and I was telling, it was the musicians, you know, and I was telling them that my mum could never, she loved everything I did, even the terrible stuff, you know, like a mother is supposed to, you know. But she used to say, you know, she said, why do you she just used to complain about everything I did that wasn't, you know, I turned stuff down, you know, and that was the other thing, you know, you've got to be careful what you agree to do, you know, don't do everything, you know, just be choosy, you know. And she couldn't get that at all, you know. But they're nice, they've got a lovely show. It's on, I said, Mum, it's a kind of square show, you know, I don't want to be on, you know. No, but, and she used to think that any publicity was good publicity, you know, all that sort of thing.
Sounds like she would fit in on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So bless her heart, you know. So, and also she thought all the titles of my albums were all terrible, you know. She said, why don't you, you're not going to call it something stupid again, are you? Like, what is it, you know, Jesus of Cool, what was all that, you know, really, you know, who told you to do that? You know, she didn't even you know, she didn't even think it was me doing it, you know. Thought it was some Svengali, you know, making me do it. And anyway, I said, well, it might even have been Jesus of Cool. I said, and I was telling the guys this, I'd said to her, what do you think I should have called it then? If Jesus of Cool is such a hopeless title, what? She said, well, I think you should have called it something like Insight. Right?
Okay, yeah.
I thought that was so, I said, Mum, that's so wet, I mean, are you serious that I would call my record Insight? I mean, it's about as far away from, what I do. Anyway, it was a good laugh. We all had a good laugh. And then Bob said, yeah, so like, and he was trying to chime in, and he said, yes, something like Dig My Mood,
Yeah.
And everyone went quiet, so, well, actually, no, that's a really good idea. So he thought that was a kind of one of my mum's, what would have been my mum's suggestions, Dig My Mood.
Yeah.
But in fact, we all went, no, actually, that's a great idea. So that's why we called it Dig My Mood.
Was your mom still around at that time? Was she able to weigh in on how she liked that title?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She liked that. She liked all those records. I told you she liked everything, that I did.
Yeah.
But no, she definitely did get that, what I was trying to do. And the other thing was that Elvis Costello took me on tour in the middle, really, of this period I took off, that I was saying about when I was trying to get sober and clean myself up and get my mind set. I had a lot of time on my hands, and he very sweetly and kindly took me on the road with him on this fantastic tour with this fabulous band with James Burton and Jim Keltner and Jerry Sheff. Fantastic band. And he got me in the group really to get me out of the house, and I was just playing rhythm guitar and I'd sing a few backing vocals, but he'd change the set every night, and I just didn't know his songs enough, so I was on and off stage all night, but he said to me on that tour, why don't you do a few solo songs to warm up the crowd a bit, And so, are you sure, Elvis? I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea, And he talked me into it, and I went out and I did 5 or 6 tunes one night, and it went down surprisingly well. And I thought, oh, this is pretty, I see what he's doing, because he just started doing solo shows as well. I said, oh, I see what he's getting at now. This could work. So I brought that on. I'd started doing solo shows, and I found that I really enjoyed it. But the main thing I'd noticed was that with the old songs, which is what I had at that point, it was old songs. I'd been making sort of records. I hadn't been recording songs. I'd been making records of songs, which very often the records, you can't stand up on a stage and play the record. And the song has got to be good, and in a lot of cases, they were pretty good records, but the songs really were underwritten, or overwritten in some cases. So I thought, it didn't take me many shows before I thought, I've got to really concentrate on the songs I write, because if you've got a really good song, you can do it anyway. It'll take any kind of mistreatment. You can do it fast, you can do it slow, change the key, speed it up, slow it down. A good song you can do anyway. And when you're standing up there with an acoustic guitar, you need everything to work. You don't want to be, I'd stand up there sometimes and be playing one of these old songs, and I think, God, why did I do this on the record? This is terrible. And now here I am, I've got to do it again.
Yeah.
It's bad enough I've got to do it once. So I thought, well, I've got to get the songwriting right. And that's the other thing about making these records like The Convincer and Dig My Mood, that it only really works if the songs are tough, and people feel really relaxed, as you were saying, play quietly and really make a contribution to the thing, not just be putting, synthesizer pads in to build up the sound. They have to play and make a contribution, but you've got to be relaxed enough to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of, especially as a lot of them were fairly slow tempo, a lot of those songs are very slow to medium tempo. You can sometimes have a tendency to walk on eggshells, when it comes to those sort of songs. In other words, to play them too tentatively.
Yeah.
So you have to have something which sounds solid to the other musicians, so they can contribute.
Yeah.
So and all of that stuff that I've been saying, it was what made the whole project so interesting. Trying to pull all this stuff together. It was just extremely interesting. Thing to do and to see where we could get with it.
So when you guys were recording those sort of live takes that form the bedrock of the record, were you mostly playing bass guitar?
No, I was mostly playing acoustic.
Okay, you'd mostly play acoustic, and then would you go back in and add bass second?
Yeah, I would put bass in, or we had Matt Radford was playing bass, but essentially it was stand-up bass.
Got it.
Because it just not because we wanted to be sort of rockabilly-tastic, but it's just that the acoustic bass has such a fabulous tone in that setting, in that kind of setting.
Yeah,
and he could play sort of Motown parts, James Jamerson style parts on a stand-up bass. Yeah, so if need be, but essentially it didn't need very much. It really didn't need very much.
Right. Well, it sounds so like warm, and it's such a great record. You've talked a little bit about playing solo, and the times that I've seen you perform, I think I've only ever seen you as a solo acoustic artist. I don't think I've ever seen you with the band, but you've been playing with Los Straitjackets an awful lot lately. Really, the last couple of years, they've sort of been your main band, right? Are you guys working on anything right now?
No, we're not. I know what you mean, but we haven't been playing at all during the last couple of years.
Well, that's a great point.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
No, we haven't really. Over the lockdown, we have made a few records, over the internet, like a lot of people have, and it's surprising how effective that it can be. It's perfectly possible to make a pretty good record in that way. Doing it piecemeal, sending it to each person, and away they go. No, we really need to be in a studio together, I think. And when we can get back together again, which at the moment is in November, I'm hoping that it's going to be possible for us to do a US tour. I've got one booked, but who knows what the powers that be are going to decide about our comings and goings. But if all goes well, in November I'll be playing with them again.
That's great. So what do you like about playing with those guys? It seems like they're very capable of going kind of wherever. There are some really rockin' songs like Rave Ups that sound great on this recent set of singles that you have put out, in 2020, I'm thinking of. But there's also so much nuance, and it seems like those guys are, I don't know, I've obviously listened to their records and checked out their stuff for a long time. Very multifaceted, which makes, teaming up with someone like you, whose discography features a lot of textures and different styles, it seems like they're kind of a dream fit in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they are. I think they're super musicians. They're really, really great musicians, and very nice people too. So it's very agreeable to tour with them.
Yeah.
But they because of their musicianship, it's very deceptive. It seems very simple what they do. But try and write an instrumental. It is really not very easy, and they've done it time after time after time, and they're great tunes, really, really great tunes, and witty. You know, they're witty and funny and sexy at the same time. It's a very hard act to pull off, but and what they do with my stuff when we first got together. I mean, I've known them for quite a long time, just on the circuit, so to speak, and we share management, so it's not that much of a stretch that we've done this together. But when we first got together, they had kind of learnt up my records, you know, as close as they could, even though there's a lot of keyboards on my records, you know, but which they don't have keyboards, they just have guitars. But they'd done a pretty good job of learning the records up, but it didn't really work all the time, you know, until it didn't take very long really before I said, look, don't worry about the record, you know, just take the song, just do the, you know, think of the chords and let's do the song your way, you know, play it your way and I'll sing over the top. And so we both of us sort of seem to adjust together, you know, until now it seems totally natural, you know. I mean, I've written a number of songs since I've been with them, you know, which we've recorded. One of them, Love Starvation, that was one that I wrote absolutely with this in mind, and one or two others. It seems totally sort of natural when we get together.
Yeah, that's great. I think a little bit about how, you know, they were an established band, and then, you know, you're linking up with them and working together. And obviously when they're playing with you, their job is to support the songs, you know, and to support you as a vocalist. But it made me wonder if working with a band like that does have a defined identity, does it remind you at all of your time producing? Because obviously you produce so many artists, you know, from The Dam to, you know, Carlene Carter and Graham Parker. Is it at all like that, the sort of same dynamic in terms of like you're entering into their world and they're entering into yours, and it's sort of a give and take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd never really thought about it, but I think in a way it is, because we've both got great respect for each other's thing, you know, and yet it's so much fun when we meld them together, you know, that both factions want to make it work, you know. So I'm very anxious, because that's the way it turns into as I said earlier, you know, that expression turns into a third thing, you know, the two parts come together and it comes into a third thing. And when it does turn, that's really exciting. That is because it's no one can quite believe it, you know.
Yeah.
When it works really well like that. And it does very, very often. Well, we have our bum nights like everybody else, you know, but it works very well most of the time.
Yeah. Do you ever miss producing? You haven't produced a lot of records in the last couple decades, but for a minute there, you were working a lot with other artists. What was behind your decision to stop doing so? And yeah, do you sort of miss it at all?
I don't really miss it. No, I sometimes think I could do it again, but really it was when I started producing records, it was in an era where really anyone could be a record producer. All they had to do was to have the front, you know, to do it, to say, right, I'll do that. Now you play this, you play that, and then right, let's have a listen to that. That's very good. Now you over here, you hear what they're doing, you know.
Yeah,
you just had to have the balls to be able to do that, you know.
yeah.
And a lot of bands were really quite grateful to have someone to come in and shape their stuff up, you know. The sort of surly don't tell me what to do stuff came a bit later, you know. But if you were young like them, like the bands I first started producing, I was just the same age as them. I wasn't some old guy in a suit and tie, like the producers who used to produce my early bands. You know, they seemed ancient to me. They were probably in their 30s or 40s, you know, but they seemed ancient to me. These old men, you know, saying, do this, do that, you know. So when I came along, I was the same age as the bands I was sort of saying, do this, do that to. But because of that, I was sort of one of them, you know. So so it was a bit different. But I didn't really know what I was doing. I was very often wrong. And in those days, you could be wrong. There was room for being wrong, but because no one really knew how it went anyway. It was you were just making it up on the spot. But the thing I enjoyed was it's always very exciting to go into a studio and then come out at the end of the day with what is going to be a fantastic record, you know, that people are going to love. And in the morning, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And in the afternoon, there is this thing that, you know, people are going to, all over the world, are going to hear this thing. And that was exciting. But it was the process also that I found interesting, the sort of, sort of man management. I like the again, I've said this before, trying to figure out where if it was a band, for instance, trying to figure out where the power lay. You know, it might not be in the most famous member, like the lead singer.
Yeah.
It might be the bass player who doesn't say anything, you know.
Right.
That guy over it, you figure out, you make friends with this guy who doesn't really want to be friends with you, you know, but you try and make friends with him, and then you can get the lead singer who's a bit stupid, you know, to do to do, you know, something that he doesn't know he wants to do yet, through the bass player, you know, that kind of thing. I love doing that, and again, sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. But it was very, very good fun, and then of course I got very lucky with Elvis Costello, because I'd known him for way before. You know, he was Elvis Costello. I knew when he was Declan McManus. You know, he used to come and see the Brinsley Schwartz playing.
Right.
And I became his record producer when he signed to Stiff Records. But it really didn't take very long for me to realize, hang on, you can back off here, pal, because this guy is something else, you know, and he doesn't need to be told what to do, and you know, you've got to be more of a facilitator with him, and I can't remember what I did on any of his records. I must have done something, because he kept on asking me to come back and do whatever it was. But I think it was just to sort of encourage him to, you know, it was encourage, and not just Elvis, but because his band, his fabulous, fantastic band he had, who were all extremely, there wasn't a passenger there, you know, they were all fantastic.
Right.
So I just really had to sort of encourage them and urge them to go on.
Yeah, I think that he's such an interesting case, because when you're talking about figuring out, you know, who's the guy with the power in the room. We had the producer John Leckie on this podcast recently, you know, and he was talking about how, you know, exactly what you said. One of the most important things you do as a producer is you figure out who's actually in charge, in a way, you know, like who's actually the one doing this. I have to imagine with Elvis, there was very little doubt that was the guy who knew where you were going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's also so interesting because at that time, you know, a lot of your work was lumped in with the punk movement or new wave or anything like that. But he's a guy who's similar to you, I get the sense. he's got interest in much older music, and he's all over the map. And he wasn't, more of a classicist in a certain way, in terms of songwriting. You must have known when you first encountered him that he was writing songs that were maybe a cut above some of his peers, right?
Oh, definitely, yes, definitely. I mean, I had some things to say to him about that, though. I thought that they were sometimes too complicated. I used to try and encourage him to strip it down a bit, and take out some of the fancy words, and make just do something a little, but really who after a while you think, well, who am I to question this guy? He's incredible, but we became friends as well. And so I was able to say things like that to him, how about it? You see, really? There's about 3 songs in this song,
Yeah.
You don't have to give all your stuff away. I don't know. I really don't. But to your point about the punk thing, I did the Damned album, and they were certainly a punk group, but they were really fantastic group. They were more like a garage rock and roll band, like the Stooges or the MC5 or something like that. To me, they weren't just that sort of mindless, dim-witted stuff. I never liked that stuff. Very, very little of actual punk music that I thought was much good. But it was the attitude that I liked. That was just like a drink of water to me. The punk attitude. But I was much more interested in good music. So I was too old, to like that noisy, silly, thumpy stuff. I was too old. I was 25 or something. The Damned called me granddad, and uncle. And, these sort of disparaging words. When I was I was a bit more than a kid then, but not much more.
Yeah. I put that Damned record on last night to get ready for this, and I know exactly what you're talking about. There's much more space in that record than a lot of punk records in terms of the guitars. I mean, it's still a loud record, and it still rocks, but there's just like that garage thing definitely comes through in a way. But yeah, we've had the pleasure of speaking a few times, and I went back and I double checked. I wanted to make sure. I don't believe that I've ever asked you about David Bowie, and sort of in this era that we're talking about, he released Low, and then you released an EP called Bowie minus the E, just the way Low was minus the E. I'm really curious. Did you ever hear back from Bowie about that, or did you ever have any run-ins with him? You never heard what he thought?
No, I didn't, and I never met him actually. I'm amazed that I never did.
Yeah,
because I've got so many friends of mine who were in some cases were very good friends of his, but I never actually met him, and I never really. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time to do that. I suppose it seems much cheekier now, than it did at the time. And I don't think I ever expected to hear anything back from him anyway. But I didn't. But it was I don't know, in many ways, a kinder, gentler time back then. You could do something like that, and no one would give it a stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, now I've already made one Twitter joke, but I'm sure there would be all sorts of like headlines about how you were clapping back at Bowie or whatever. You know what I mean? Some sort of joke. But I've always loved that. I love, you've talked about how you felt maybe you were a little too old for the punk thing, but that attitude that you're talking about, I think that is exhibited in your work from the time, chiefly in that sense of humor, because you're not taking it very seriously. And it seems to me that a lot of rock and roll music at the time was hyper serious or aspiring to hyper literate sort of stances. And there's nothing wrong with that stuff. So much of that stuff is stuff I love now. But it seemed to me like at the time, if you were punk in any way, it was in the sort of jokey, riffy, irreverence. Is that a fair way to put how you maybe felt in those days?
Well, I wonder if I've got this little sort of game that I play with, and some of my friends are in on this. It's called Funny and Not Funny.
Okay.
And the theory is, I mean, I could expand upon it, but the theory is that up until the Beatles, who I love, don't get me wrong, I love, all pop music was funny. It was Otis Redding. I don't mean comedy. It's something else. There's a sort of humorousness in it. Elvis Presley, Otis Redding, James Brown, all of it, they were funny. Even Frank Sinatra was funny, and Doris Day, Tennessee Ernie Ford, Howling Wolf were funny. The Beatles come along and they invent prog rock.
Yeah.
They made it, put the art thing in it, and they invented not funny. And now there's a lot of not funny artists who are really, really good.
Yeah. So as we look at this great record, The Convincer, do you feel, because it is funny, there are funny songs on it, and I mean lately I've Let Things Slide is funny,
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, because I've always liked to invent a character to do my songs. It's not. I don't really do personal stuff. I've had my heart broken, and I've been lied to, and I've lied, and and done bad things, and had bad things done to me. So I know what I'm talking about, but I don't really put my diary to music. Instead, I like to invent a character to do the hard work, in the songs. But preferably, the thing that I most enjoy is the hapless sort of goon, someone who really is, he's trying to do his best, but it's just not good enough, and his pathetic, attempts to make things right, that's an area that I find extremely interesting and also very funny. There's something very funny about that.
Yeah.
Even in, if somebody is brokenhearted, some tragedy has happened, and you're writing a song about it. If the character says something funny in the midst of that, it seems to heighten the misery. Because you think, oh man, he's trying, he's trying his best, to get out of this, and it's no good. So it does seem, it's a sort of technique, which ramps up the misery. And makes you smile or even chuckle, but you do it at the same time. You think, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautifully put. Well, Nick, it's been such an honor getting to hang out with you a little bit this morning and ask you about this great record. Before we go, I would have to, we've talked a little bit about Elvis. Looking online, it seems like some people seem to suspect that you were in the studio with Elvis Costello before the lockdown happened. Is there any truth to this rumor, or can you not talk about that? We can cut this out if need be, but I'm curious.
No. No. I'm not coy about that at all. Right before it happened, I went to tea with Elvis. Me and Peter, who you met just now, my wife, and I went to tea at his hotel when he was over here doing shows, and he asked me to, if I would come and essentially produce a few tracks for him. He booked some time in Abbey Road, and I was astonished by how quickly I said yes, okay, I would. And 2 days later, he cancelled his tour, went back to Canada, as it was, and all that those plans were shelved. So I don't know whether, when the smoke clears, and we all come out from hiding, that he's going to ask me again. But we'll
I've got my fingers crossed. I think Blood and Chocolate is maybe my favorite Elvis Costello record. So I'd love to hear you two do something together again. But regardless, I'm looking forward to whatever you do. Nick, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Jason, for having me. See you again. Bye.
Cupid must be angry. That's all I can say. How else to explain why he's gone away? I've been praying he'll come back.
Nick Lowe on Transmissions. I'm Jason Woodbury. I write, host, and produce the show. Andrew Horton edits our audio. Visual assets are created by Sarah Goldstein and Jonathan Mark Walls. And our executive producer, top of the show, announcer, and main man is Justin Gage, who founded Aquarium Drunkard in 2005 and hosts the Aquarium Drunkard Show on Sirius XM every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. California time. I appreciate you tuning in. We know there is no shortage of things you could be listening to right now on the internet, and we are honored to have your attention. I'd love to hear what you're thinking of the show. You can find my contact info over at AD. You can find me on most of the social media platforms. And of course, Aquarium Drunkard is on Patreon if you want to take your support further. Next week on the show, Alan Licht. Until we're back in the same zone, stay safe, and thanks so much for tuning in to Aquarium Drunkard Transmissions.